you're a home buyer, somebody or a young person looking to buy a home, you need a bit of a reset.
There is a possibility on the other side of this that inflation could actually be quite low.
Welcome back to Real Estate Mindset. I have another great collaboration today with Melody Wright on where we're going across the nation. And I'm super excited, guys, because now I'm going East Coast. And what we plan on doing is exposing the new construction scam that's going on across America. Now, the West Coast was easy. I expect the East Coast to be much harder. But before I bring her on, let me plug her channel real quick. If you guys are interested in learning more and hearing from Melody, if you find value, go to her YouTube page, Melody Wright. If you want additional perspective, she has a great podcast that she does. I think, once a week, I think it is. Sometimes it's a little bit off, but great stuff here. And if you guys also want some of her brilliant writing, I absolutely love reading her writing. I'm jealous. She knows that. But go to her Substack, listen to what she's saying. She offers incredible perspective, you guys. Without further ado, Melody Wright, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Travis. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited about this road trip.
Me
I want
too.
to tell the viewers, Melody, I'm not excited about the weather. There's an Arctic blast that's happening right as I'm leaving. So I can't catch a break with these road trips. Yeah, I went through black ice through the West Coast, through the mountains from Boise to Reno. I mean, I don't like ice on the road, but I wanted to tell the viewers, Melody, first where we're going, and then I wanted to ask, a couple things, what you hope to gain, what we expect, because there's a lot of scams going on in new construction right now. The more light that we shine on that, the more prepared consumers are going to be, and consumers are not prepared enough. But some of the places that we're going to go to, guys, is we're going to start with going to Atlanta, we're going to go to Charlotte, we're going to go to Raleigh, we're going to go to Richmond, we're going to go to Washington, D.C. for some reason, but we're going to go to Washington, D.C., and we may either go to Virginia Beach or Delaware. I'm going to try to convince her to Delaware, even though she wants to go to Virginia Beach, because Delaware, oh my God, Delaware. And then also after that, we're going to go to Wilmington, Myrtle Beach, Charleston, and one metro that we both were like, oh my gosh, we have to go here, which is Huntsville, Alabama. So we're going to go there. And Melody, I want to start by talking about hypersupply. I want to start talking about how the data is not being reported. And what we see from Fed economic data is that there's currently 9.2 months of supply for new homes. It's commonly agreed that 6 months of inventory makes it a buyer's market. We're well above that. That's what I'm saying, like hypersupply. But not only do we have this hypersupply, the data is without question being underreported. The Census Bureau says it's underreported. It says on the actual Census Bureau it's underreported, financial bias. We don't have everything in MLS, Redfin, or Zillow. So can you tell me from a shadow inventory standpoint, and shadow inventory means that this is what they're saying is there, but when we actually get there, boots on the ground, this is how much is really there. And also, and I'll shut up, we're going to have the drone. Oh my God, I got my FAA license so we can legally do this. And having like eyes in the, like from the sky perspective, oh my gosh, it's such a different perspective. But what do you expect to find in regards to hypersupply and shadow inventory? Do you think it's going to be as bad as the West Coast?
I think we're going to find pockets of it. And I'll just say that 9 months is the seasonally adjusted, and non-seasonally adjusted, it's 11 months. And so, this is a lot of supply. And when I went out, my first trip will be a year in February. I think we're going to find more of the same. I went out there, I was expecting to see the new build sites, but I was not expecting to see so much empty inventory, all across the Sun Belt. But I lived in Pittsburgh, and everybody was saying nothing's going on in the Northeast, but all you had to do was drive around a little bit and you would find these pockets. And so where it's not going to be, I think, like Phoenix, because they don't have that much land. But I absolutely, based on all of the reconnaissance work you and I have done, getting prepared for this trip, we absolutely know that we can see them, that the same infestation is there. It may just be on a little bit smaller scale. And so, the shadow inventory, and we talk about this essentially on the MLS listing sites, you're expecting to see all of this new construction. Instead, like for Lennar, for instance, they stopped listing on Realtor, doing primarily Zillow. And the reason why that's important is that the Fed uses Realtor.com That's the data they use to actually talk about what's out there listed for sale. But what will happen, and I've done several case studies, as have you, Travis, is you will go out to an existing new build site. You'll see 300 homes. Somewhere like Lakewood Ranch, you're going to see 1,000 homes. And then you go to a listing site and you can only find a couple of those. And that happens for the for sale as well as the built for rent. So I imagine that it may not look like a Phoenix exactly, but we're definitely going to see these pockets like, we just saw, both of us saw recently out in Denver as well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that there's going to be like clusters, but I don't know yet because I haven't gone on the trip. But I don't think it's going to be like maybe like Phoenix, areas of Boise, areas of Salt Lake. Las Vegas is unbelievable. Dallas is unbelievable. But it's going to be very interesting. And I think that we're going to see the same thing where it's grossly underreported. And I'm talking like disrespectfully, like it should be against the law. Like how the hell are we underreporting data and where it's 2024? I mean, everyone's talking about home inventory, but yet we don't track it with the biggest area of new inventory, which is new homes. I don't understand how they're getting away with this. They are scamming people. They are scamming people. I've been to some subdivisions, boots on the ground, and it's a Harrington Trail. This is a case that I've been really walking and watching because they listed like, I don't know, it was something like 50 homes that were supposed to have sold. But then I went back out there like a month and a half later and they all had those removed and they were for sale again. So, some of these places, Melody, they have 2-3 times more inventory than what's being reported. And the reason I talk about this all the time is I try to explain to my viewers that, real estate's so localized, it's really about the subdivision, and subdivisions that have like this hyper supply of inventory that's not reported on the websites. But when you get there and you see it, it's there. Those are the subdivisions that are generally going to have the best sellers concessions and the best buying incentives. But that brings me to the next thing, prices and sellers concessions. Obviously, the industry, especially with new home construction, is designed to take advantage of foolish home buying. They're going to take advantage of that. And also, I will add that one thing that's keeping overall existing homes, the prices of those propped up, are new homes. So it's the lack of inventory, but it's also new homes because they're still selling and they're inflating the price that they're actually worth because they're not reporting sellers concessions. So obviously out west, I found a whole bunch of price cuts. Obviously the subdivisions were going to have price cuts, but do you expect as we make our way out east now, it's a tighter market overall, do you expect to see the same type of price declines and price cuts? And what are your thoughts on the lack of seller concessions being reported?
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure what we're going to see in terms of price declines because I think so. Just a little something that the builders do is that if they have a certain community or subdivision, they use cost modeling, and this is a complicated way of saying they don't have to do fair market value, which is how much is this home really worth in this subdivision. Instead, they kind of cost model it. They use like aggregate facts. Okay, this is a $400,000 home because of XYZ. We're going to make ABC off of it. But when they have to fair market value, they have to go off of the comp factors in that subdivision. And a lot of these excerpts right now, Travis, because that are basically complete, but nobody really knows they're complete, they are not selling. And so they're not actually even making those concessions so that they don't have to do fair market value, because they have an accounting rule that says if any community makes less than a 10% margin, that's when fair market goes into effect. And so just think about it. If you're running a company and you know what's happening out there, you're going to want to wait as long as possible to see if things turn around before you even start trying to sell out of a specific community. So I'm going to be very curious when we're out on the road if we're going to see a lot of the homes that are finished but not finished because they don't want to take those write-downs. And then, as you were saying, those concessions are not being recognized. And really the only way you can find that out for sure, and even this won't do it, But you could go to county records, look at that deed, but what that deed will likely miss will be the fact that they did pay the closing costs, they did pay for your solar, they did give you a free washer and dryer. And so there's absolutely no way to actually know what someone paid for that if they're not putting it in the MLS and you're simply looking at the deed recorded at the county.
Not in Texas. Texas is a non-disclosure state. When I was in Cali, I could find out everything about everyone's purchase, but in Texas, it's hidden. You don't even have to tell the county how much you purchased your house for. And I would suggest you don't do that because of assessment value and all of that. But, it was a little bit of a loaded question when I was asking about prices, because really the answer there, guys, is you need access to MLS. You have to figure out what homes are selling for in that area. And I suspect what we're going to find, Melody, we're going to find price cuts, but some of them are going to be tricks, while others will be real. And really, the easiest way to determine that is to access the data. But unfortunately, we don't have MLS access in every one of these metros. So I'm looking at price cuts and hypersupply. If we have price cuts and hypersupply, usually it's safe to assume it's potentially true price cuts. Now, which leads me to the next thing. One of the things that I've noticed on the road that is really, it just blows my mind, the building competition. I mean, again, when I was going out west, these subdivisions, these master plan subdivisions, Melody, not only are they overpriced for the native, so it's out of reach for normal people to buy, it's far out of reach, but there's literally 5 of them next to each other. They're building on top of each other. And that is another thing that I'm looking for signs of distress. The building competition, being right next to other homes that have spec homes. Do you suspect, being that the East Coast is a bit tighter market, do you suspect to see as much builder competition as you've seen, say, going out to Las Vegas and Phoenix?
Probably not at the same scale, but it's there. And I'm hearing from people. I talked to somebody last night about Washington, D.C. The first thing that blew me away is what you're describing. The mega sites is what I call them, Travis, where you would go on site and there would be all of the nationals in one big, gigantic site competing. But, what's happening around the corner, and sometimes even within the mega sites, is that your small local builders are also trying to get in on the grift. And those guys aren't really tracked. And what will happen is that your nationals have a lot more pricing power. They have the ability to do those concessions at a much larger scale than those small private builders. And so that competition is going to really heat up in the spring. And so I'm not expecting the scale of the Sun Belt and out west, but I am expecting that we're going to see, and we might see more local builders on the East Coast, because there is so much more red tape around, infill and what and the land is more scarce. And so we might actually see more competition. So it'll be very interesting. What we actually find out at the end of this trip.
Also what's interesting, Melody, is first of all, according to Fred, the prices of new homes have been going down overall. The most recent report is only showing them down 12%. It was over 15%. That's about $62,000 down. But something intriguing to think about is I asked myself, well, why do they keep building? Do they know something? Well, obviously they know things that I don't know, but do they know something I don't know? They're still building. We have supply 11 months non-seasonally adjusted, prices going down. They're still building. And I think one of the reasons that is, Melody, well, other than foolish optimism, okay, so there's going to be an element of that, but they just have more room to go down. Even if home prices, new home builds went down 20%, let's say, and again, they were just down 15, they still have room to go down to where it's still profitable. So again, that's why, I constantly tell people one of the reasons why the house market is propped up is because these new home builders that have room to go down aren't yet going down. The 12 to 15% is great. That's great, but it's still way out of reach for the normal people. So they do have, not all, obviously the little ones are different, but like big companies like Lennar that buys building materials in bulk and things like that, certainly they have more room to go down. But my next thing that I wanted to talk to you about is one of the things that I've noticed on the road, depending on the metro area, is how important migration is, it appears to be, to these massive developments. Do you think that we're going to be heading to some eastern, metros where they're no longer getting enough migration to sustain prices. And I ask you that a little bit naive, Melody. You have a lot better data when it comes to migration and, the population, but those are historically tight markets, like Washington, D.C., right? Like that's tight. New York, like that's tight, right? So they may not need migration. In fact, there may be some places where migration is leaving. Can you tell me what impact migration is having on new homes right now, the prices and the supply?
Well, I think right now, not a ton because people are still deluded about what kind of migration is occurring. You go on, and I'm sure you heard it, Travis, when you were talking to people out west and in the Sun Belt, and they still think people are moving at these massive numbers a day, even though that's not what the data says. And the data says we really
Yes.
slowed all that moving in 22 and 23. Additionally, places like Nashville had net migration out. And you can't tell somebody from Nashville that. They will look at you like you're crazy because everyone says things like, oh, there hundreds of people are moving here every day. But in reality, we have such a skewed picture of that migration because it takes so long to get those numbers from the census. I'm trying really hard to partner with somebody who has cell phone information to get a better proxy, but I think most of these locations have had negative demographics.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
think when you're living on a wave of narrative versus the truth, it doesn't even matter until suddenly there's an awareness that, oh my goodness, we don't have as many people here that we need to house that we thought. Because there's a great Harvard study from a year ago about how we pulled forward demand in the United States during COVID, especially for that millennial cohort. So everybody looks just at the raw numbers, but they don't understand that we increased household formation during COVID, quite a bit. And there's way more limited demand out there. And even for your top 20%, there's just a limit to the amount of homes they're going to want to buy and sustain, especially with those increased costs. So, I think that is going to be interesting to see actually what the demographic story is. Based on the last census results that go up to 22, and then what we're hearing when we're there and what the narratives are going to be,
Yeah.
because the narrative, and that's what we've seen this year, has driven this market more than anything else.
Yeah, a lot of emotion, a lot of fear of missing out. I mean, that's how real estate is done. I try to warn people. And that's why I said, like, the system's designed to take advantage of your bad decisions and your emotional spending habits. So,
Your
and
emotional decision. Yeah.
and why is the
Because
biggest
housing is
financial
very
transaction?
emotional. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is. Because it's
very
like the
emotional.
American dream. That's where you want to raise your
Correct.
family. That's where your kid. I mean,
It's
so
your
I understand it.
status. It's how you define yourself in many ways in this country.
Yeah, I mean, so I get the emotional aspect, but what I'm trying to tell people is so do the people that are corrupt. They also get it's an emotional process. So have
Absolutely.
your guard up. So I mean, to complement
That's
what
right.
you're saying, I suspect the metro areas, Melody, that we visit that have that net migration out, I think those are going to be the metro areas to keep an eye on with those tighter markets out east. But I also think that is possible until we have economic collapse, unemployment, and things, that the areas that are tight East Coast that still have the migration in, I'm very curious to see what's happening out there. Like, will we not be able to find supply? The thing is like, if we find a whole bunch of houses that are sitting empty, okay, well, there's an indication right there, right? But I'm suspecting that it's possible that we actually may be in areas that don't show, that excess hyper supply that still have that migration. It's going to be I'm really excited about it, which brings me to my next thing. So, of the areas I mentioned, and I think I mentioned it at the beginning of this, do you have a favorite area or an area you're like excited about? Because I do. Depending on if we go to Delaware, but I'm super excited to be going to the Carolinas, to like both North and South Carolina, because for the longest time, people were asking like, Travis, what are your thoughts on Raleigh? What are your thoughts over, Myrtle Beach? What are your thoughts here or there? So now that we finally get boots on the ground and we get to visit there, I'm super excited. But really what's exciting me, Melody, is the data that we've accumulated so far on the Carolinas. I mean, there's price cut, especially, let's see, which one was it again? It was Charleston, especially Charleston.
Mm-hmm.
I found like almost every subdivision has a price cut, and there's like subdivision on subdivision on subdivision. So it's like these mini little pockets of like how Dallas is, Las Vegas, and Phoenix. So I'm honestly, maybe I'm a little bit too naive here, but I'm I think it's possible that we see some pretty large clusters in the Carolinas. Do you have any metro that like you're super curious about or excited to visit?
Yeah, like you, I am very excited about the Carolinas, especially South
Yeah.
Carolina, because I've seen the evidence, but I haven't spent the time. But I'm also very excited about Huntsville. I've been hearing
Yes.
from a lot of followers about Huntsville, and this is, I went to the University of Alabama for undergrad. My dad's side of the family is all from Alabama, and I've been hearing about Huntsville, which is somewhere I went as a little kid to the Space Center. That was something we did often, you know, just very curious to see how that place is grown up, because what people don't understand about the South is that it just cannot structurally sustain this kind of growth. They just don't have the jobs for it. And even some place like Huntsville that has sort of that, a lot of things going for it, still underneath, they can't sustain a median home price at these levels. So I'm very, very curious about that.
Right before we started this podcast, I had just finished with Huntsville. So yeah, it's nuts. So pretty much anything like east or west and north of Huntsville. I mean, there's subdivision on subdivision on subdivision. So I just finished that. I think you could be excited. Just to kind of conclude this up, and I know you have to go here shortly. Basically, what we plan on, continuously exposing with new homes is the shadow inventory, the fact that there is massive lack of, transparency. There's a lack of reporting. We're going to highlight the fact that no concessions are being calculated against value, like they're inflating value because you're supposed to remove sellers' concessions in appraisals. I know you said FHA just emailed appraisers like, hey, you better start counting those concessions. And I'm like, too little, too late. We needed that back in the year 2020. Another warning I'd like to give people, Melody, is the fact that many builders have arbitration agreements in the special warranty deed, at least they do in Texas, and in Florida, which means you can't sue them if there's something wrong. That is a huge, huge thing. Also, I would like to say, get everything in writing. I don't know how many times I've been part of transactions where a builder has promised us something verbally, but come to closing, if it's not in writing, they will treat you like dead meat. Also, the last thing is the quality of construction. There is approximately 470 some thousand job openings for new construction. So a lot of these people are desperately trying to find any workers at all. So there's a quality control issue. Is there anything else that you want to kind of highlight that maybe as a warning that I missed?
No, so that was so good, Travis. And I posted something yesterday. I found a new site that tracks claims against builders, and it's increased
What?
exponentially since 2022. Very similar to the way in the run up to the last crisis. We're not at those levels yet, but they're increasing. And I think you've seen, there's a ton of lawsuits out there against the builders for shoddy home construction, seeing
Mm-hmm.
that in Florida, especially.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just going to continue because what you said, the labor shortages, lack of supplies, people cut corners. So I love what you just said. It's so important. And I'll just say this. I kind of have nightmares about a young couple that gets all these incentives and buys in a big new builder community, and they're the only home there. And then suddenly, that the builder stops selling or they sell it out to somebody else for long-term rental. And this home that you bought and you thought you were going to be surrounded by other young couples buying new homes, you realize they're going to rent it out now. And I think that the builders are going to get into trouble and they're going to need government help. And if that's the case, you might be living suddenly in something similar to right next door to Section 8 housing.
Well, and then also we saw that in Las Vegas during the GFC. I call them ghost towns. I mean, there was almost entire subdivisions that maybe had like a handful of
Right.
people living in there. And I also want to point out, I like what you said. And honestly, when I go and I tour, and sometimes I go into sales offices. Usually, I don't do that anymore because some of them know who I am, and I just don't want the confrontation.
I
Although
know,
my
same.
viewers love it, they love it. But I can see them a mile away, like that naive new couple that just got married. Because I remember when I was in, I think it was Phoenix. I went to a KB builder. I went inside their offices. I wanted to see the price cuts that they were listing. And off to the corner was just very young, naive looking, very precious, right? New couple. They didn't have no realtor, Melody. They were going completely blind, and you could clearly see they were so in love with each other. It was passed on to this idea of home ownership. So that love that they had for one another was now glowing on like, we got to buy a house. So, I tell people all the time, keep your freaking guard up and be mean, because it's set up to hurt you and take advantage of you. I really love, I'm going to have to get that info from you about the claims against the builders. That is huge. Oh my gosh. I gave you the new home source data. You got to give me that one. Okay.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, absolutely.
So that would be so cool to have. Isn't it amazing that
I'll
it's
shoot
a
that
new
over.
home source? Yeah. So anyways, guys,
I'm eternally grateful, Travis, for that.
No, you know what? Iron sharpens iron, Melody, of course. But you guys, we're really excited about this. We're going to try to do, the best we can to hit these metro areas, a couple different areas that will go north and maybe south. And we're going to try to cover 2 to 3 subdivisions per area by providing you guys a boots on the ground of one of the subdivisions. We'll do a flyover of one of the subdivisions and really what I love about Melody helping me on this trip is I don't have to be burnt out driving 6,000 miles, still have to perform and make videos. Right. And I watch some of those videos. I'm like, oh my gosh, Travis, like, no shame, huh? You're just gonna let it all hang out. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know how bad I looked until I got home. So I'm excited about it.
We're road warriors.
I love and I look like it, dude. I look like definitely a road bum.
No.
But Melody is going to be there to add, additional perspective. And I think my viewers would really value additional perspective. So I'm really happy that we're teaming up together. We're going to go visit, Todd, go to New York as well. Very exciting stuff. So we'll get out of here. I know you have a meeting in actually less than 2 minutes. Do you have anything you want to say before you go, Melody?
No, just I'm super excited, and I think that we're going to uncover a lot, and we hear often out there. I know you do, I do as well, that this cannot happen in the Northeast, and so this will be very illuminating to see what we see, and I think both of us are open to whatever we find on the road. We're going to report it back to you, but I can't wait. But viewers, we're going to need your support because, like Travis said, these road trips are very taxing, exhausting, and can be very overwhelming, especially when you walk into some of these subdivisions and you see these empty homes. It can be for those of us who went through the GFC, it's emotional because we really believed we'd never be here again. And we're not here just trying to get followers. We're here to try to give you the tools to make the best decisions for your, financial livelihood in the years to come for you and your family. So, but we can't wait. And thank you so much, Travis, for having me on. And thank you for inviting me on this trip.
Absolute pleasure. So other than that, guys, I'm going to let you go, Melody. Don't forget to show her love. Go to her Substack. Go to her YouTube channel. Hit like if you guys found value. Hopefully you guys found value. Super excited. We will report back to you. And other than that, guys, if you're out there investing in real estate, we wish you luck and we hope you win.